All right. Welcome, Anthony. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Anthony, I mentioned to you as we logged on here, I got to see you in 2019. Got to hear your story of perseverance and having a big identity shift that kind of got you to where you are today. But our audience maybe hasn't heard your backstory, and I'd love to, maybe start with that. If you could just kind of tell us who Anthony Trucks is and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. Well, this first one was actually easy. The second one's a long one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm Anthony Trucks. He's a man of God. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a guy that cares deeply about helping people get through some stuff they've been through or going through that I have been through. No matter how that shows up, man. There's a lot of people I help that the world will never ever see. I do a lot behind the scenes, and then there's also a lot of stuff I do in front of the scenes, podcast, talking, stages, all that kind of fun stuff. But also professionally, we'll call it. I'm a speaker and author, and I teach people how to do the dark work to make shift happen. And then how I got here, oh man, let's unpack that because it's a long way. I got here through a
Yeah.
lot of craziness, like all of us do, but it'd be hard to put in like a summarization.
No, I hear you. So, yeah, maybe start with. I know that I was listening and getting ready for this show. I was kind of re-listening to a podcast you were on, and
Yeah,
I know there were some dark times for you a few years back, and
yeah,
that led you to having a bit of a, I don't know, wake up call, identity shift. I mean, I don't want to
Mhm.
label it. I'll leave that to you. But can you tell us what was going on maybe before that moment, and then what happened in that moment?
yeah, yeah. So if we're talking about I'm assuming it's post NFL, right? Like after I got
Yeah,
out of the league. Yeah, it
yeah.
was dark, man. I call them dark times. That's the best way to explain it because they were not fun. They were horrible. I got to this point where I grew up as a kid in foster care, given away a whole lot of heinous stuff as a kid happened. Beat the odds, got a college football scholarship, played football for a few years, four. Had a kid in college, met my real dad in college, married my high school sweetheart right out of college. Got to the point of NFL, 3 years in, tore my shoulder because NFL stands for not for long. I came home and to figure out who is Anthony without this thing of football, right? That's a big question we all have. Who am I without this thing I've been doing for so long? And that disconnect was huge. The disconnect had me fall away from the sense of self, the sense of confidence, sense of pride. And so in that, I think we all find these ways to fill the gaps. And mine was probably the improper way. Ended up getting divorced after having two more kids with my high school sweetheart, and went to this dark place of like I'm now like realizing that life after football is not all that great for me. Right? I was in this business that was up and down. At one point, I was divorced, living behind a 500, or actually in a 500 square foot studio apartment behind one of my staff's girlfriend's house, of all places. My kids are on an air mattress. I'm on this, mattress that's still twin. It was just at a certain point, I was like, man, if this is life after the game of football, I don't want it. Like I've hit the pinnacle, man. I'm good. Like I'm not going to just ride this down to the bottom. And so I had to wake up. That was an unfortunate one of all. And there was a moment in time where I drove off and I was like, I'm done with this life thing. It's just, we don't have to go deep into it unless you really want to, but definitely had some issues there. And my mom passed away, my adoptive mom.
I'm so
Go ahead, go
sorry,
ahead, go ahead.
Anthony. Yeah, I do want to stop you just for a second.
Yeah.
Did it get to the point, yeah, where you were like, not just we all question sometimes, I guess, why we're here. Were you questioning should you still be here in that
Oh, yeah.
moment? Yeah,
100%, man. You start to question, like, well, if I'm of no value to me and I'm of no
yeah,
value to why am I here? And
yeah.
it's heavy. It's a heavy place to be because you don't see it out. And on top of that, I think one of the harder things is we usually don't want to be a burden to people around us, or we don't want to have anybody see us sweat, right? In the social media world we live in nowadays, everybody's got to show everything that's great about them. And so, God forbid, everything's not great. And that was kind of like the experience I was having was, well, I'm not doing that great. I don't want to burden my friends. Let me just get out of here. And
Right.
that was unfortunately.
What stopped
And
you from doing that?
honestly, there's nothing that was like, so I was driving around looking for rat poison in different stores, and other stores that carried it were open. It was just too late at night. So I was like, all right. And I just stopped my car somewhere. And then somehow the GPS from my phone, not somehow, but GPS from my phone tracked me, and the police found me. Like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm good. And I have a gift of gab. So I told the police, like, everybody's crazy. I'm fine. I just was out for a drive. They're like, we'll go home. So I go home, and like that was, I guess, what stopped it. It just, I think the wave of the emotion of the pain subsided because there's actually a part of your brain that can't 100% distinguish sometimes between emotional and physical pain. It feels very visceral, very real. And so for me, I was going through that in a moment, and then in that realization moment, like the wave kind of was able to pass. As the wave passed, my logic came back, and I had to just face it. And I think it was the first time that I finally was it wasn't the best way to share it, but I'd now shared with people what was going on behind the scenes. And in that sharing, I had people come in and pour into my life in ways that it wasn't part of my life before. There's statements that were said that I wasn't aware of. Just little things made more sense. And
Who were
so,
those people for you that you initially
uh,
told how you were feeling?
well, you know what it was? My best friend Jay. And then it wasn't so much that I told everybody, but like the situation, whenever I would like disappeared one night, I texted my friends and family, was like, hey, tell my kids who their father was. That made its way around town pretty quickly. We'll call it. A lot of people out looking for me. So when I
Right.
got back to my house, they were all there in front of my house. And so like, all right, this is real now, you know. And so you kind of that was the outing of it. And then once you move past that, there was moments where like, I had private time just from a different place with different people in my life. And one of the guys said something, Richie Belcher, he comes to be the back of the office one day and he goes, hey man, I want you to know, like, first off, two things. One, never do it again. He's like, when I found out what happened, like I threw up. He's like, I thought that was like you. I thought I lost a hero. I go, that's crazy to hear, you know. So I said, yeah, I'll never do it again. But I said, what are you talking about this hero thing? You know, I'm just Ant. And he goes, no, man. There are a lot of people in this world that look up to you in this town specifically. And I played high school football with the guy, you know, and at this point he was working for me at my gym. And he goes, you've lived a life that people understand. It's really hard, but like you're like someone who's made it, man. Like you're a guy that people look up to and you've done a great thing. And it was an interesting thing because in those moments, like it was a seed that got planted that was around the realm of like maybe what I've gone through is worthwhile to the world to
Mm-hmm.
hear it, but I
Mm-hmm.
had no intention of telling anybody. In fact, I didn't even know that this world I live in now existed. To be quite honest, this was like in 2011, and I didn't even find out about this world till 2014. So like
Because what in your mind it was like you had like you were given this one opportunity, this amazing opportunity, which was football, and it didn't work
mhm,
out. So in your
yeah.
mind, was it like that was it, right? Like that was your shot and it was
That was
over?
it. That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
do, man. Then you
Yeah.
come home and it's like, well, you lost the high, you lost your wife, you lost your family. What do you do now? Like, what's gonna make this great? There's nothing I couldn't. When you've gone to the peak of the mountain and you don't think there's any more mountains, you go, well, I guess we're done. I
Right.
guess we're done
Right.
here. I did the thing, you know. Let's just go
Yeah.
ahead and call it quits, you know. So that mentality kind of trickled in, and so yeah, there was a lot that was just wasn't. It didn't give me a sense of like future optimism. There wasn't joy. There wasn't hope of what could be, if that makes sense. So this one thought of maybe the life I'm living accidentally that's benefiting people. What if intentionally I did it to benefit people? Maybe that could be it. But at the time, all I knew was fitness and training and sports. And that's what I did. I owned a gym and just did that, you know. And so that was kind of the push. And it's funny. People always ask me, how'd you become a speaker? Like, what was the pathway? And I go, I think I never found speaking. I think speaking found me, to be quite, like, I'm 100% being honest with this,
Mm-hmm.
because I was not intentionally trying to be a speaker at all. None. No part of me thought this was going to be my world. I went and taught people like fitness stuff for my certifying body, and I would go out, but I wasn't going and telling my story. I was doing my thing. And at one point, this organization called Fire Alumni, they asked me to, they go, hey, can you come in? One of our firefighters, he ended up getting, diagnosed with cancer. So he can't present on this topic of fitness. And one of our firefighters, a guy named Lontavius Johnson, he goes, he knows you, said you might be a good fit to come in. I hadn't talked to Lontavius for years at this point. I'm like, cool, he must have been paying attention to what I was doing. So they had me come in and I teach for like 4 hours on this other guy's presentation. I didn't even know. I taught someone else's presentation. They go, man, we love your skills in teaching. Do you mind coming and talking to our big group? I go, what big group? Because we teach people across the country how to become firefighters. And so we just need someone to come and give like a keynote for, 30 minutes on this topic of health and fitness. Again, health and fitness at the time, Yeah, I'll come in. So I put a little polo shirt on, some slacks to go out there and, talking to people, meeting all the different firefighters and fire chiefs. And it's one guy named Judon Cherry, who happened to be like the main kind of coordinator of it all. He goes, hey, man, we're going to put this all together. We're going to, film it and we're going to sell it online as videos. I go, what are you talking about? Like, sell what? Where? Because you can put it online and sell. Like, you can't do that. He goes, yeah, yeah. This is a guy named Brendan Burchard who teaches people how to do it. I go, Brendan, okay, you got to link this thing. Let me check it out. So he sent me this link to something called Experts Academy. And I clicked the link, and sure enough, I find myself in a Brentwood Starbucks. And this is Brentwood, Northern California, not the one in SoCal.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching this guy talk about this whole thing of like, if you have a story and it can be beneficial to people, like there's a way you can monetize that and make impact at a massive scale. And it tugged at my heartstring, man. It planted some crazy seed. And I don't know if it planted the seed, but maybe it watered the previous seed of the idea
Hmm.
of like maybe there's something to this all. And so I found myself watching this stuff, and then I go to an event. The event happens to the live event takes place an hour from my home in Santa Clara, California, of all places. It could have been across the country. It was an hour from my home. I'm like, I can't beat that. I guess I'll go. And I go down there, and the rest is history, man. And now I speak on Brennan stages. I was a dude that just showed up, and someone from the stuff from the audience to like I'm like the one of probably millions that are actually on his stage speaking now. So it's kind of a weird trajectory, but I that's why I say speaking found me. I think I was
Well,
always supposed to do it, but I wasn't.
I think it's really cool when it happens organically because I think don't get me wrong. I mean, I think there's some people that contribute a lot that go out with the intention of like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to speak on stages. But I think
Yeah,
when the value is, or the intention is, let me contribute, let me find a way, let me find my story. And then if that resonates with some people, then great. Then, I really like that.
yeah.
You grew up in the East Bay, right? Antioch?
East Bay, yeah, town called Antioch, yeah, of all
Yeah,
places. You
I
know
was
it?
born. Well, I was born in San Jose, and then I was trying to match up like
Yeah.
your graduation year with. I've got some buddies that I'm guessing you may have played football at the same time with because they played at De La Salle, and
Okay,
with
who's
the
there?
Antioch. That's in Concord.
Oh no, my oldest son went to De La Salle, graduated from there last year. I know
Oh,
where it's
okay.
at. I'm just saying who are the people.
Oh, Rich and Nia. I think these guys are older than you. Um,
Ania is
yeah,
they may be a little bit older.
yeah, they're probably
No,
like
yeah, very
5 years
older.
older
I mean,
than you.
I live around the corner from De La Salle. My youngest son and daughter will probably go to De La Salle and Carnelette also. But yeah, my oldest he graduated from there last year. He's in Oregon now running track.
Oh wow, awesome, awesome. So this how did getting on stage then change the, I guess, purpose and mission, or how did you develop your purpose and mission from that? Because now I feel like
Yeah,
everything about you, I see you as being like the identity shift guy, right? Like that,
yeah.
like how did that come to be?
That was a couple weird journeys. Here's the what I'm telling you, the secret of all of this. If nobody's catching this, I'm gonna say this and then pay attention because you'll find it within every single thing that I've been able to build and create. All came because I was able to be curious and chase the passion. The
Right.
curiosity led it. I chased the thing passionately, and I like the more I would lead in, I would find different things. That's how it all happens. Here was the first part of it. I was curious about the speaking. I decided to dive in. You go, how'd you become this? The identity stuff. Well, at first, I had a brand called Trust Your Hustle. It was a whole different brand. It was all about like trusting the part of you that was like the one the hustle you put in. Trust that part of you, right? Because we don't trust that sometimes. So I built the brand on that. It didn't really take off all that well. It was kind of going, but it wasn't. It's this powerful thing I wanted it to be. And so in the journey of me being curious about how to be great at what I was doing, how to be a better speaker, I got better and better. When you get better at something, people notice. You know, the more you shine your light, the brighter it gets, the more people can see the light, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you aren't shining that light, man, no one sees it. So when I was doing speaking and doing my thing, and building up. I think eventually you saw me in like 2019. Before 2019, we had this thing. So from 2014 to about 2017, 18, something like that, I just was tucking away doing my thing. 3, 4 years, speaking as best I could, getting the mess out best I could, making coaching programs, doing the best I could. And then I got invited to this mastermind with Brennan Burchard. And it wasn't really a mastermind. It was like him wanting to get his friends together in the middle of nowhere. So we all went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and we're out there shooting guns and and fishing and everything and hanging out. I'm dead serious. We did. We
Yeah.
shot shotguns like we're skeet shooting. We're all in like these just dirty clothes. We're living. I think with the guy who owns LuLaRoe, we stayed at his mansion out there, and
I'm
it was
also
an amazing.
wondering for a kid from the East Bay, like, was that a totally different experience for you, or
Oh
had
yeah,
you?
man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was cool. But I'd done stuff. I'd done TV shows with like National Geographic. I've been
Oh,
out.
cool,
I've
cool,
been weird. I got a bunch of weird stories, man.
cool.
But yeah, so I wasn't like out of my element completely,
Right,
but it was
right.
definitely fun to be out there. And we found ourselves sitting in this one spot after we're doing the skeet shoot, and everybody's going in a little circle talking about stuff. And I think it's like me and like Dean Graciosi and Jeff Walker and Russell Brunson and Trent Shelton and Lewis Howes and Craig Clemens and Dave Hollis. I think yeah, there's a bunch of just cool guys. Ethan Willis is a guy too, and so we're all sitting there And we go in the room and we tell everybody a story. Now, no one really knew me but Brendan put it on, so I got the invite. So you go, everybody says, Anthony, let him go ahead and talk. So I talk and I share and I'm telling my story and how much I love this trust your hustle and it's all great. And this guy named Ethan, who's one of Brendan's business partners, he goes, I don't like it. I go, what do you mean you don't like it? He goes, I don't like it. I go, well, hold on a second. This is like my life. He goes, listen, I'll tell you this. He says, there's two things. There's that they have to match to be phenomenal in this industry. You have to have the message and you have to be the messenger. And he goes, you, as I'm hearing you speak, you're the messenger, man. You can talk, you can share. He's like, I get that from you. He says, but the message isn't aligning. He's like, I get that the hustle idea. He said, but we all hustle. Everybody here hustles. We get down. Like, he's like, but what's unique is like, there's something behind the scenes that I'm curious about. He goes, how did you go from being the foster kid and beating the statistical odds there? And then, you know, and the points of like family and stuff that takes place, or like, you know, football, and then like leaving the game of football and still, you know, not falling apart. The marriage, I remarried my ex-wife 3 years later. It's like, your ex-wife, all these stats and odds. He goes, but it's like you were a different person in all these areas. He says, what I want to know, how did you navigate all the different identities and then get in this room with us right now? That was that like, oh, I never thought about that, because that was like this idea. He's like, and the whole group goes, yeah, it's an identity thing, man. Like no one's talking about that really. Nobody really was talking about identity.
And a
But it's
lot
like
of
go,
people, and a lot of people are talking about hustle, right? I mean,
everybody's hustling.
yeah,
That's
everybody's
it.
talking about hustle. Everybody's talking about
Everybody's talking about
grinding it
hustling.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. And so the identity thing, and you find it's starting to make its way in now, this identity concept. And it's since morphed even further, but at that point it became this idea of an identity shift.
Hmm.
How do you shift your identity in a journey that gets you to the place you want to be? Because I've now come to believe you do not get to have a dream that's above your current identity.
Agreed.
Right? Because who I identify as, it dictates my actions, my thoughts, all those kind of things. And those actions and thoughts create my life. So if I don't identify as that, I don't do those thoughts and actions, I don't get that thing. And so how do I make this shift? And so I leaned in probably the last at least 2-3 years to a concept called the shift method, like make an identity shift. And the destination is one that people aren't, it's not super engaging. It's not super sexy, we'll call it. No one goes, I want to have an identity shift today. Like, yeah, never
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
But I did realize that there's always 3 stages to the path. There's the starting point, there's the end point, but there's the vehicle in between. What's the vehicle that gets you there? So we know the starting point, someone is not feeling happy or fulfilled or like they're at their full potential, right? We just know you're kind of funky place. The end destination is I'm operating with this mentality of like, I can do anything. That's how I live. I'm curious, I'm passionate, I dive in. And I call it, it's like an identity of what's called a dominator. I want to dominate my marriage and my life, not in a bad way, right? But I want to dominate my life on a daily basis so I can show up and be so great that I give out more. I can flow out and do positive for the world. But there's the in-between. That vehicle for me has always been, gets the idea of like the shift method, but it wasn't sexy. And there's always this part where I talk about in my keynotes, which you were there and you heard, when I was 15 years old and I was sucky at football. And I realized that I wanted to be great at football. And I started doing things that were not my current identity to get better. And I did. And fast forward 7 months, I show up to the football field and I had this different mentality, I had this dominator identity. And what it was I have done too much work in the dark for you to take what's mine in the light. It was this guttural, anchored, deep sense of like, you don't get to win today. There's no, I've already done this. I've already worked, I've already earned this, right? And that mentality, I believe, lives in all the most successful people in the world. They've done so many things that's not seen. It's hard. It's not sexy. It's misunderstood. It's ridiculed by people. But when they did it for so long, they became somebody. So I realized that it's not just this idea of like a shift method. It's actually dark work.
Right. Because
So
the shift is like this, but the dark work is the enduring
it's it.
discipline, the day-to-day activity,
Yeah.
the boring stuff, the painful
Yes.
stuff, the stuff that,
Yeah,
like you're
yeah.
saying, that nobody sees. Yeah.
That's what for us. So it's the new brand that is woven into it. It's how you optimize your identity for peak performance. That's it. It's how do I get you to become the person where you wake up and go, this is who I am the person who does this. Therefore I do it. And it gets me the success, the joy, whatever it is. But it's not the stuff you see in the light. It's not the sexy pizzazz. Look at me on stage. Everyone wants that. But there's no way that I could literally recount all of the things I have done in the background that no one will ever see.
Right.
That only I know about. But that is the pure reason why I shine brighter in the light and why I will not lose to anybody in the light or even myself. I'm not going to lose to me who wants to be tired today or I don't want to do it today. He doesn't get to win. I've
Right.
already done the work. I get to shine. That's what I believe the world's missing. I think it also leans onto in my opinion, the missing part, which is falling back in love with doing the sexy work that no one sees, that just you feel proud about. Because it is, man. When I do stuff on my own, I get that work. I feel good, like, but
Right.
no one sees it. It's for me. But that's the stuff that oozes out when you're in the light.
I heard you talking on another podcast, and it just so resonated with me personally about on this topic about. I'm trying to remember your words, but I'll let you try to remember them with what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
essentially, what you're talking about is that you don't walk into the day and then kind of figure out what you're going to do, right?
No, no.
Like the higher, and I do the same thing. So like on the weekends, I'll
Yeah.
go, all right, what's my vision for the week? What there's a certain amount of stuff that has to get done, and it has to get done at a
Yep.
certain time or a meeting or whatever. But then there's also like different outcomes and what's going to happen at 3 o'clock on Tuesday when this appointment ends. Like, what am I doing at that time? If
Yeah.
I leave it to my own devices to make that decision at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, I'm
Eating
not getting my
crackers.
optimal. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Eating crackers, checking for
Yeah.
Amazon orders, like whatever, and
Yeah.
and so I'm really big on there's a point in my day and there's a point in my week where if I put myself in the right zone, if I practice the right physiology and also have the right disciplines and practices where I can say, look, I'm going to be the best boss of me ahead of time, right? And just go, here's what I'm going to do with my downtime this week. Here's the outcome I want. So that when I get to those decisions like, oh, it's time to go to the gym, instead of wondering if my sneakers are clean, the sneakers are clean, man. And the and
Oh, there you
the
go.
and the headphones are sitting in the shoes themselves and the running shorts are already ready to go and all you have to do is grab your shit and go, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
there are no decisions to make. But where did you get to that? Because you articulated that on a podcast recently and I was just really obviously it resonated very well with me.
Yeah. Well, the place that it came from was me in 2011. Somebody presented to me this idea of like structuring my day because I was in this gym trying to run the gym, and I'd find that I had all these tasks to get done, right? But you don't usually feel like doing them, so they only
Hmm.
pop into your head if you feel like it. So I'm running off of an emotion, not off discipline. There's no
Right.
plan. And so what happens? I would like, oh, I got 2 hours, and I would find that all of a sudden I'm talking to somebody for an hour, and then I'm like, I gotta get lunch, and then an hour has gone by. Now I've got nothing I wanted to get done that day done. And I'll do it tomorrow. Same thing happened tomorrow. And I go, well, how do I actually start getting things done? So I started creating like this. It all was a sheet from the hours of like 6 in the morning to like 10 at night. I started going in there going, well, what should I do in these hours? Okay, I got clients here and started filling it in. And what it did is allowed me to start saying no to people. Like, hey, I
Right.
can't talk to you right now. I got to work on marketing, right? That was the simplest way to explain it. It's easiest. But there's what I found for a lot of people, unfortunately, is we then go, well, I don't have time to get all my life. I always feel rushed. I don't have time to get all my stuff done. So what I started doing is going, well, what if I just like structure a life to where I work all my plans out a good ways, right? So when I sit down on the weekends, I'm not worried about next week. In fact, I don't even know what happens tomorrow. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Right.
But it's done in a way to where like when I'm on Sunday thinking about my adding to my schedule, it's 4 to 5 weeks from now.
Sure.
Usually it's the week. The reason is because if I do that, I stay ahead of the curve. And so my life is organized in a way where I can always say yes or say no, but I can get projects done in ample time, if not faster than most, because what usually slows the projects down is when I'm working on something, all of the projects are in my head, every single one of them. So I can't even get focused. So what I do is go, okay, what are the 3 or 4 I want to work on? How many hours will it take? Let me infuse it hour by hour modularly into the next 4 to 5 weeks. And then I do that. What I find is I have ample time. I have extra time, right, to still live my life and do my thing while still getting a whole crap ton of different stuff done. And so I can live my life in a great harmony to where I'm not stressed out. Like, and also it allows me to make adjustments on the fly if need be. Matter of fact, today my wife and I have to finish a whole bunch of slides, but I had a window of time, had 2 hours and 15 minutes to get some stuff done. And then I'm looking at my counter. My wife and I, she decides, I want to get an RV. All right, we're getting an RV. So we go looking for RVs yesterday. And then today she's like, got time to get it tomorrow, like, which is, or did it today. And I go, I do and I don't, right? Because I've said no to enough people and kept my schedule, I have a block of time to work on something. I need to work on it though. But I go, well, if I do my schedule, I move this here over here, I can go get that. So we did make an adjustment. I'm going to go pick up my RV, pick kids, be a cool little thing. But my life still stays on track. I'm
Sure.
not behind schedule. I'm not freaking out. I move those hours to the evening or adjust them to the back end of the week, move a few things out. I can live my life. And so my ability to do that is why I have a peaceful life and a very impactful life. I'm not in stress, I'm not worried about things, but I'm in peace. And this is the thing. This is a dark work nobody sees me do. No one's going to know about this. This is going to be me
Right.
just doing my thing. They
Right.
wonder, how does this guy do? How's he clone himself? I didn't clone myself. I just know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, what I've said no to, what's being moved 2, 3 months away from now. And when it's time to work, I work. That's it.
Right.
When it's time to sit down and do it, I'm doing it. I may not want to do it all the time, but it's going to get done. That's the
I,
mentality I live with.
I agree with you completely. I'm curious if you've ever heard this. So sometimes when people see my schedule, and I'm guessing yours looks similar in terms of it being blocked and
Yeah.
intentional, and I've got
Yeah.
color coding all over the place. And
Same for me. Yeah.
yeah, people will look at it because it looks like a Tetris puzzle or something, and they'll look at it and go, "Oh my God, when do you ever just get time to stop and smell the roses?" And I said, by scheduling this way, it's
I
actually the
do.
only way that you can stop and smell the roses. Because
Really.
if I'm not intentional with my time, then I'm always thinking about the stuff I'm not doing, right? I'm always
Yeah.
thinking about the stuff that I'm behind on. So I think one of the analogies you used that I heard earlier today was um, treating your own time kind of like a business, treating yourself like a business versus a
Oh,
job,
heck yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
walking in and just, what am I going to do today? That's a job.
Can't do it that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah. A
Tell me
business is
how,
yeah. All
oh, sorry.
systems. Yeah. No, I was saying it's all systems. If you come in and you your schedule should tell you what to do today. You shouldn't be
Yes.
coming in saying, what should I do? You do that, you're losing from the get-go.
I agree completely. One thing I also noticed, I was just curious if it's always been a part of your life or if it's been over the years and since kind of the 2011 thing, but spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, that seems to
Yeah.
play a big part. Even terms that I've heard you use, like just kind of letting life unfold, letting the universe's plan unfold for you. Where does that all
Yeah.
play a part in where you're at today?
Yeah. I'm a Christian man, very
Yeah.
openly. It's just how I've always been. I'm not a Bible thumper, though. I'm not going to be out there telling you that you suck and Jesus is coming and you're going to go to hell with fire
Right.
and brimstone. It's just not my thing.
Cool.
I believe it works for my family, works for me, works for my friends. But I've always been a guy that people eventually go, well, how are you like you are? How are you like peaceful and you're forgiving? I'm a man of Christ. Like it works. And so like I enter into that kind of aspect. But what I've found is I've always had my own desire for plans. We don't think we can have control. And I don't know when it was. A couple of years back, I had this weird idea, and I go, you know what? I'm not gonna mess up the plan with my plan. And I
Ooh,
find that life is
that's a good one.
created in a really cool way that things show up, and they show up best when I'm not trying to make something else show up. And then when they do show up, they'll sometimes throw me for a loop, and I go, oh, but I don't want to. I got this as my plan, right? And how do you know? The heart I find knows. Like there are things that show up in front of my doorstep and I go, oh, nah, not gonna fit. And my gut will go, but it feels bad. But your brain goes, but it could be good. And you start combating yourself. And when my brain and my head aren't aligned, I just go, it's not for me. It's just not. I think it's not supposed to be part of the plan. Then there are things that pop in and the heart and the head go, yeah. And then if you give it more time, they'll eventually pull away. So I actually act pretty quickly when situations arise. There's an opportunity that came to my pathway 2 months ago, which it's a behemoth of an overhead, like a task, but done properly, it can be the financial base for my company and the marketing avenue that should fund things for years, right?
Sure.
So when it came to my pathway, I had to look at it and go, it's going to be a whole lot of work. My heart goes, but this is the thing that ties so much into everything it is you do. Like this avenue, this strategy, like it literally it taps into every one of my skill sets as a professional, and it puts in an amazing display, and it solves a lot of problems. But the brain goes, that's going to be so much work. You already have this you're working on, and this you're working on, and this you're working on. But before I let my brain pull it away, I said, we're doing it, and I committed to it. And
Because
then
you
when I did,
knew you were
I knew.
aligned. Yeah.
And I moved my life around to make it all fit. And to be honest, I was probably the last one to get started on working on it because of the way my schedule works. So I went and did this thing and had to fit something in the very next week for 3 straight days, which was pretty hard. But after that, I go, okay, I get what it is. but I can't do it to my life again. I gotta make sure I adjust some things. So 3 weeks afterwards, I started putting it in, and we go live in 2 weeks with the first portion of it, and it kind of was launched from there. But that was the thing where I go, I gotta feel out what life is giving me. So that was the plan. It was presented to me in an interesting way. Where, like, for example, I even saw it in a message from somebody that I would typically delete. Usually I would delete this message, and for some reason I opened it. Don't even know why. I was like, oh, I'm open that one. And it just, the rabbit hole of it all, right? And so I go, all these little pieces come together when you look at them and you go like, oh, that could have went wrong here and here and here and here, but somehow it did. I go, that's not an accident. The fact that these little things happen, that was so uniquely, specifically tied together. And I go, I got to do it. Like
Right.
my head and heart are aligned. And so I think it's been a big piece for me, is not trying to be so rigid, right? But also knowing that the plan, it's designed to be adjusted. It's designed to have audibles, we'll call it.
I think one of the things for the last few years that's resonated with me, and I had my own kind of story with addiction, and one of the guys that I read that really helped me kind of deal with that and progress from that is a guy named Tommy Rosen. And Tommy used kind of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which don't really resonate with most people because they're
Yeah.
so overly
Christian
God
faith.
fearing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And frankly, I didn't grow up with that either. So at that time, when you're at your lowest moment, when actually God probably could be of his most assistance to you, like you
Yeah.
don't want to hear it that way. And so he had a way of kind of revising these things, these steps into a way that people that might be resistant to it could receive that information a little bit better. So in like the
Mhm.
first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to mess it up, but some of the degree of, life has become unmanageable. You're turning yourself over to God to help you manage it. And it's like, well, God, if you don't even know if you believe in God, right, then how can you turn yourself over to him? And really just,
Yeah.
you could say the words, but if you don't mean them, it doesn't
It's
mean a
not
lot,
hard.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
he talked about, well, what about consciousness? What about connecting with and living from consciousness? And it's like consciousness can be a whole bunch of different things to different people, right?
Could
Like
be.
if
Yeah.
they're, and it was just interesting. And consciousness to me, or the universe, or whatever someone wants to call it, is it possible that there's a plan out there, that there's a higher power out there that I think I heard you saying there's probably a plan unfolding if we just don't mess it up, right? If we
Yeah.
can just kind of get
Yeah.
out of the way, and I'm paraphrasing
That's
what you
it.
said,
Don't
but
mess with the
yeah,
plan, man.
yeah, and I'm feeling
Yeah.
that way now too, where it's like instead of going, I think we all get so attached to like what we want or what does my brain want right now or what is my, and I'm using addiction as a background, but I think we all have it because whenever we're indulgent, even in our behaviors that are not serving us, right, that are taking us down a wrong path, that is the same as addiction, right? It might not be a physical
Yes.
addiction, but it's an addiction, right? And I think when we're connected to consciousness or God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, there's a pause, right? Where you can go, well, what does this actually mean? And like, does this align for me? Is this, and I'm not talking about it being on brand or is it going to make me a lot of money? Does it serve who I am, the greater good, everything
Yeah.
else? And like you said, when sometimes
Yeah.
but I was never asking myself that question until a few years ago. You know what I mean? I was never asking that question. I was only
We all got a journey
concerned
to it.
with, yeah, I've got my light out here. I've got my outcome. And we're just going to take a machete and hack our way to that outcome, right? Even if the universe is throwing signals in that outcome might not be the right thing,
The one.
So,
Yeah. That's the weirdest part about it. We'll do that. And I think when you really break down to why we do it, typically we're chasing something that, the way I look at it is, there's certain societies and certain places that have no idea of the things that could be goals for me,
right.
and vice versa, right? They literally, like, maybe somebody's goal could be to, I don't know, be the best, ladybug painter in the world. I don't know. There's something that they
Right.
do, right?
Right.
And the thing is, when I go, okay, well, this thing is introduced to me. Well, how did it get in there? I ask that question. How did this idea pop into my head? Why am I fighting this? Where did it come from? And then you go back and track. Well, that came from this guy or this cousin or this friend or this thing I saw on social media. Well, then why did that become my thing? Like, did I want to do that? Like, so you start asking questions and then you start unraveling things. And I go, a lot of the things that we all seek and find is because somebody else sought and found it and told us we should.
Right.
And
And we're
then
just
we start
pursuing
breaking
it blindly.
that's
Yeah.
it blindly, dude. And so, like,
Yeah.
I live in this world now. where I tell people like you if to set your own scale and create your own season of what you live in. Like right now, I'm a guy that I'm a home studio, right? I travel and talk. I probably do about 20, maybe 24 speeches a year. That's the most I ever want to do. And I'll tell you why. And I look at people in my industry and they're traveling a lot, speaking a lot, huge stages. They got, they're the hotels with people around them and talking, all this things going on. And you go, mate, well, I should want that, right? I should want to. How do you do that? Well, you gotta work. You gotta build from the morning to the afternoon. Then get your kids, and get home like at 5 or 6. Maybe get your kids. Then you gotta work at night before you go to bed, and get an hour with your wife. And I go, this doesn't sound conducive to what really, when I peel it all back, is what my heart wants, which is my heart wants kids that have a present father that love their father, or their father loves them, and I want to make them better humans. I call it season of dad. Like I'm in season of dad right now. And season of dad means I get up in the morning with my son. We do a morning routine, spend a half hour with him. And then he goes up to school. Then I work. Then I get my kids from school. Then I coach them at their teams. I train them in the weight room. I'm my wife's strength coach. And then I'm at games and I watch TV shows at night and I'm hanging with them. If I wasn't in season of dad and owned that, I'd be working all this times. I would be missing this stuff.
Right.
But the only reason why I would not be in that is because I would adhere to somebody else's idea of, well, if I want to be the guy that's in the hotels and getting the interviews and getting the stuff, then I got to do that extra work. I would have to sacrifice that. So when I started peeling back what really mattered to me, that wasn't it.
Right.
I adopted it from somebody else. And so when you take into account what I want, cool, I'm gonna live my way and do my thing. And the funny thing is, when you do that, it actually sometimes moves you closer to that thing. Like I find that my adherence to my schedule, my structure, my life, because I show up in the few moments I do, I show up so full that it shines bright. Whereas if I
Right.
was dim across all of these things, it wouldn't be as noticeable.
Well, because you'd be wearing yourself thin. You'd be, yeah, you'd
Exactly.
be, and I think, I'm a trainer for Tony Robbins, and there's one thing that we go through all the time, or that he's gone through a lot, that's really stuck with me, and I think it overlaps a lot with what you talk about. But we all have a blueprint of the way we think our lives should be, and I think that blueprint is really tied to our identity, right? When we get too out of our blueprint, like you got so far from your blueprint in 2011 that it was going to take you
Yeah.
down this other path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you may have not even known what your blueprint was then. You just knew somewhere inside of you was like, it's not this, right? It's not the way I'm living right now. I think very few people, to your point, even successful people, really take a pause and go, well, who am I really, and who do I really want to be? And because if the definition of success as a speaker is grinding it out and doing 200 speaking gigs a year and all of this, then congrats. You might be able to reach that. I'm sure with your skill set you can. Unfortunately, you'll be a bad dad. You'll probably be out of shape. You'll be sleep deprived. You'll take a few years off your life. Like every other
Mm-hmm.
area in your life will fail. So unless that identity, or until that identity, I think for all of us, becomes something that's all encompassing, we're going to have a hard time being fulfilled, right? Because we'll be living to somebody else's expectation in this one particular area, and the other thing is we'll knock ourselves completely out of balance. And I feel like you seem to be a guy that has extreme balance and extreme awareness when those balls are getting close to hitting the
Oh, yeah.
floor, of like when to pick them
Yeah.
up.
And I own it. If I'm messing it up, I own it. I step out of it. I don't want to prolong pain. So I'm not so attached to my ego and having to be right as much anymore, almost
Right.
at all. Like I don't like to. First, if I'm right and I know I'm right, I will be very clear that I'm right, and I'll let you know. But even then, if you don't get it, it's like cool, all right, and that's what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna convince you, right?
Right.
And then at the same time, if I'm wrong, I go, I'm wrong. All right, I'm wrong. Let's get past this. I don't want to sit in that spot for the next 5 to 7 days of trying to battle and eventually going, all right, I succeed. If I know, I know. All right, cool, I'm wrong. Because
Yeah.
why wouldn't I? Except for the fact that I gotta be right. That's an ego play, right?
Yeah.
If I want to be better, then better might mean that I'm wrong. So I can get better, right? So when you can live in that space, it's not like I don't lose a sense of self because I'm wrong right now. The way I look at it is when I play professional football, all football, whenever you go out in the football field, you're bad, man. You're baller. You do your thing,
Right.
right? But when you go into the film, you still notice the little mistakes you made. You jumped too far left, you read this play wrong, you lined up incorrectly, you missed the tackle because your feet weren't right. But it doesn't mean you're a bad player now. It just means you made a mistake so you can get better. And
Right.
if you were in the film room going, shut up, coach, I don't need to hear this, you wouldn't get better.
Right.
Eventually, the game would pass you by. So for me, I look at life like that. Like, it doesn't mean I'm a bad player and bad at life because I made a mistake. So let's own this, fix it, let's press on. Don't have to happen again.
Totally, man. I agree with that so much. And so, what's next for you? Where does this? Where's your identity taking hold next? Be it professionally, personally, or
The
anything else?
brand of dark work, man, that's the big piece for me.
Yeah.
So for essentially the last 3 years, always been this identity shift, which is still the goal. The destination is the identity shift, but we always had it as kind of like this arbitrary. You figured out what it is, and I go, no, we need to clarify what kind of identity we want people to have, and I think it's the most important. What I found it to be is it's that dominator identity. Like, that's really an identity, but that identity is fueled by something, which is a mentality. There's a way that the person, think about the people we know, the Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, even the Tony Robbins, whoever you know that's like these titans, right? They operate with this mentality of like, when you're in the room with them, there's a different air, it's a different energy, or just you know what I'm talking about. There's a
Mm-hmm.
different feel, right? So I go, well, how does that person operate? Well, they have an identity, but that's fueled by a mentality, and that mentality is, I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. I'm not losing anymore. Done too
Right.
much, right? That comes from doing dark work. That identity was from dark work. So the future of what we're doing is helping people do this dark work, and literally at a psychological and neurological scale beyond this, the tactical, right? Because tactical, I can tell you what to do, but I need people to realize that elevation of identity, that shift, it happens internally and it happens in the brain. And if you think about how we are all wired right now, it's because of experiences. That's the
Right.
only thing that helps you think a certain way, feel a certain way. If you got bit by a dog and I didn't, you might hate dogs, I might love them. It's all experience. So if I want to get you to that new identity to reach your dream, I got to put you through a specific experience that's not like we've always done it, haphazard and accidental, intentional. Here's the experience you must go through. You'll create for yourself. You'll structure, you'll track in your planner, right? You'll put it in place and you stay disciplined to it. You do that, and over time, you eventually emerge and you go, I'm somebody different. That
Right.
old headspace I was in, I don't think that way anymore. I don't function that way anymore. This is who I am now. I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. This is, my business is going to grow. I'm going to get my promotion. I'm going to fix my marriage, whatever it is. That's what we want to do. And so the future of my whole company is around dark work. It's actually the name of the company. I've trademarked it, URLs, you name it. And so it's going to be fun to launch that into the world, because I think the world misses this nowadays. We live in this era where I feel like we appease the weak so consistently because no one should ever feel bad. And I go, no, you should feel bad.
Right.
Sometimes feeling bad needs to be in place so you can fix something to feel better. But if you aren't in the mentality of almost falling in love with the hard, dark work, like, you're not going to be successful. I was telling my son last night, he wants to play football. He doesn't have that itch to do the work in the dark. He doesn't have that love for the process yet. So I explained to him, son, like, you don't get to have the dream that millions of kids want if you don't love working in the dark, hard, like difficult. You got to be, I'm talking sell out for that, because they are. You don't get to pay 80% and get 100%. And so that's what I think the world is, it's retracting from the societal norm, is like, just make it easy, do this shortcut. You could, no, man, go do it because it's hard. Because here's the cool thing: not only do you actually get better at the thing, you get more prideful, you get more proud, you
Right.
get more confidence, you have more swag. Like, there's a whole new you that comes out that nobody can touch. And that's what I want the world to get. So I'm excited to bring that back a little bit. We'll call it, maybe not back, but bring it in my own angle.
Well, and I think, yeah, putting the dark work into the light, making it more commonplace, right? And I'm guessing part of that is, or assuming that part of that is owning where you're at, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've noticed when you speak, I really love, and I'm sure it's part of what a lot of people really love about you is, like, you really own your stuff, and you'll say, like, in this part of my life, I was a bad father. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't mince any words about it. It's like, here's where I stood in that area of my life, and is doing this type of work, the dark work. I mean, I'm guessing owning your start point is a big part of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's a big piece of it. If you don't,
Yeah.
because I have a planner, it's called GPS planner, and GPS needs to have 2 points: where you're going and where you're starting from. If not, I
Yeah.
can't chart a path. So you got to know that. That's typically the hardest part of it, though, because that's the riddle, the ego riddled situation of like, I have to admit that I'm not doing great in order to actually figure out what to do to get great.
Right.
No one likes doing that.
Well, we're
So
attached to our
yeah,
stories of going like, if I don't,
yeah,
I remember from a Tony Robbins seminar as a participant writing a thing at Date with Destiny, writing a letter to my wife, and our relationship was challenged at the time, and I wrote her this letter. It was challenged because because of my drinking was probably the main reason it was challenged. I remember writing this letter about how much she meant to me, and it was all part of this exercise we were supposed to do, but I really meant it. And I also wrote in there like, hey, I didn't want to address the elephant in the room, so I danced all around kind of the alcohol issue, and then it was like, if things don't change, if I'm not able to blah blah blah, then I will. And then I got home and didn't do jack shit about it for like 2 more years because I
yeah,
wasn't
it happened.
ready. Yeah, I wasn't ready to let go of that part of my story, my identity, whatever, even though it was pretty destructive. And so I think
Mhm.
for anybody wanting to make a big change, I mean, I think it just starts with owning exactly where we're at and then jumping into the dark work, you know?
100%. That literally is it. That's we actually call it respecting the light. There's three stages to how we do it, but respecting the light. The first part's respecting what the vision is, like actually clarifying what, because it means to give admiration for, right?
Yeah.
Respect the vision, like what you have is this view. Give it some respect, which means admire it, get attached to it in a good way. Then you have to respect. This is a big one. The things that people are doing to get it, because we look at some people who had the thing and go, "Oh, I wouldn't do what they're doing." No, no, shut up. Listen to me. What they do, you may not love how they did it, but they haven't, and that wasn't easy. And if you don't try to gain some kind of information or some benefit, you will miss out on the goal that can help you get there faster.
Yeah.
We got to do it the exact same way, but you got to have some respect for the fact that they are there right now. Third part of it is you have to respect your work. That's what you're talking about here. Respect what your stuff is to do. Respect your falls, your pitfalls, your limiting beliefs. Maybe you have to respect the fact that you have given up in some area, but you have to respect that, which means give admiration for, which means I see it, I understand it. That's not who I am, but I have to give it that respect of a moment of going, there is work that I must do that might be different from somebody else, but it's my work to do. Then respect the gravity of this thing. And that's a big one that I want to make sure I threw in there because I think that sometimes we don't get the gravity, meaning the weight of what this is going to take. I think if we get into things and we're not prepared for how heavy it's going to be, we will go like, "Oh, can't do this," and we walk out of it. When I took this new undertaking on for my new marketing process, I'm talking it's like a 5-person job. It's condensing 2 years of stuff down. I have the skill sets to do it, so it's been a mental haul for me. Had I not gone into it with a full understanding of the gravity of what it was going to be, I would have stopped weeks ago. But I
Right.
understood it, and so I could when it gets hard, I can breathe in. I can breathe a little bit. I can take a moment and breathe in. Okay, cool. Hey, only way to get through is to take one more brick and put it from here to the next pile. Right, one brick. Just keep moving bricks by bricks. Because I look at here's all these bricks. They got to go here. Imagine walking up, going, I'm gonna move some bricks, and then you walk up and there's a pile of bricks. You go, whole. You'd walk
Yeah.
away. If you
Yeah.
knew it was going to be there, you're like, all right, I get it. I've already processed how I'm going to take care of this one at a time. Right. So people enter things without really getting a gravity of what they're facing because we're talking about facing the vision of what you have, the kind of person that's done it and respecting and not being judgmental, and the work that you have to do to get it. That's a lot. If you don't breathe and respect the gravity of that, you'll face it and go too much and you'll walk away and they have an extra regret on top of your heart.
Agreed, and it makes it that much harder, right? Yeah, because now it's even heavier. I tried it and I failed again, right? And I
Exactly.
think what's one thing that's really interesting to me when it comes to human motivation and identity is when we do find something that's really, really strong, like a future identity, and we've done what you're talking about. So maybe we found a mentor and we're going to model them at least to start with. We've got leverage, right? Like, maybe the place we're at. So we got some negative leverage, like to get our butts out of bed, maybe, but then the positive leverage really to get ourselves to where we're going. And then what
Mhm.
I've found is when you start really doing the work, you can already live as if you're that person. Like,
Yeah.
I think you said, and I didn't hear you expand on it, so I'm curious. I know we're running up on time, but a few years ago, I lost like 50 pounds.
Mhm.
And the day I went in to lose the 50 pounds, I was just really pissed off because I used to be athletic and I went to run a 5K and I couldn't do it. And it felt like shit. And,
Yeah.
my identity was thrown off. And so I was like, no more, right? I just got pissed and I got out there and started running every day and I changed my diet
Yeah.
and weight started falling off. But I started feeling great about it literally like 2 days in because to me, it was already done. Like it
Yeah.
had been decided. Like I would run every day or as close to it, that was physically able to, and I would eat right, and I was so committed and so pulled by that future vision and so disgusted with my old identity that it was just a matter of time. And by knowing it was just a matter of time, then I already felt like an athlete again, even though
You
I
already
was
had it.
still kind of fat on day
Yeah.
two. Because I was like, well, whatever, come see me in a
I
couple
get
of
it.
months, I'll be fine.
Yeah, because you know who you are.
Yep.
You attack back into who you knew yourself to be previously. So you're like, all
Yep.
right, I'm. It's like you're walking in a path. Like I'm gonna get there. I'm just taking the steps to get there. But you're not presently unhappy with the step you're on. You're like, I'm unhappy, but like I'm still doing it. I don't hate this enough to stop because I know where
Right.
I'm going. I think that's one of the problems some people have is they don't know what that looks like on the far side.
Right.
They haven't clarified the vision. And so like I have a friend, my wife's friend, who was a heavy set for a lot of years. And my wife's like, why can I get this person to get in better shape? I go, they've never been in shape. They don't know what that is. They can't
Yeah.
connect to a place they've never been. And so how, you got to get her to connect emotionally to what this will look like and feel like and viscerally feel it. Because now your brain goes, I want that. And when your brain wants it, it'll find a way to get it almost all the time. Right. So that's how the whole works. Everything is designed in a way where I got an idea, we make this thing real. But if I don't see the idea, I can't make it real. And so you're 100% like I operate in the same way. Once I've settled into something, I'm like, cool. I'm excited because I know what's coming,
Right.
and I know who I am. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to
Right.
not do it. Can't wait for it to get. It's coming. I can't wait. You're gonna see, when you see it, it's gonna be great, right? And I can live in that space in my own head most of the time because I know I'm going to do the dark work to get there.
Exactly. And so maybe it's a plan that's going to take 100 steps, and you're on step two, but you're going to do
I'm
the other
fine.
98. So it's all
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Really awesome to meet you one on one, and
See,
and
man.
been following you for a few years now. Thanks for all the good work that you're doing. We're going to
Thank
put
you.
all your contact information in the show notes, and I hope to see you soon, man.
Yeah, man. I'll be around. I travel the world and do my thing. So if you pop up at an event, you might see me there. Who knows?
I'm sure I will. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.